Hello everyone, and welcome to my first FlossTube. Hi, my name is Vicki of My Creative Corner 3. I do a little bit of all kinds of crafts and creative endeavors on this channel, as well as post a audio podcast that I do post with a still photo here on YouTube. I like to talk about all of the different things that I like to make, and recently I have discovered or rediscovered cross stitch. So I wanted to talk to you about, I really started cross stitch when I was about 19 years old. I was a newly married young wife, and we lived far away from my home here in northern Michigan. And I was homesick, so my mother knew that I always had crafts and making as my go-to. So she bundled up all the things she had laying around the house and shipped them to me. Now you remember back then we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have easy telephone, it was long distance calls. Do you remember those? So calling home was expensive. We actually wrote letters and cards and called once a week on Sunday when the rates were cheap. So if you like that walk down memory lane, you're gonna like my story, because in the box of all the things she sent was this. Yes, it's by Dale Burdett, and I cross-stitched for the very first time. I went to the library once I opened this up, and I was fascinated. She even had purchased the little strips of Ada cloth that you put on a tea towel. You hand sewed it, and I made these country geese. Yes, do you remember that? Country geese. We'll talk so much more about them today. And here's the pattern. So I fell in love with it, and I cross-stitched almost every one of these towels in 1987 and gave them as Christmas gifts. I loved cross-stitch so much that one day my goal was to do everything in this book, which is circa that time. It was purchased here in my hometown for $3.50. That was a lot of money. And it just has all of these super cute seasonal. My first needlepoint project was similar to this, so I really always wanted to make this particular needle point converted to cross stitch, and I like this colorway a lot. The nativity is cute, but I super duper like these floral designs. So I look at these. Oh, look at the gingerbread house on the front. They really haven't gone out of style. Everything is old is new again. If you hold on to patterns long enough, it's like a gold mine. Even on the country Finger Looking Good is what it, Country Finger Looking Good, yeah, by Dale Burdett. The apples and the strawberries are still in vogue. So let's fast forward to about 1990. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, gave me these napkins. It is a beautiful even weave. But there was a table topper right here with that beautiful even weave, and I was like, oh, cross stitch. I've never stitched on even weave, but I collected a magazine that had similar Santas to this. Now this book came from my grandmother-in-law, and I have about 6 of these, and I've never stitched any of these projects, but these are leisure arts patterns, and I have to tell you, I loved everything Santa. Christmas is my love Christmas. It's my thing. Maybe not as much now, but back then it was. I had small children, and I was so into all Victoriana of the time. Loved Victorian things, old things, and there is just a Santa in this book that I'm going to do. I am, and I just loved this fabric so much. I put it on my table several times without anything on it, and I thought, you know, Santas would look fantastic. You know, these types of Santas. Now, in this book, there's a more modern Santa that's on a crescent moon, and I think I could do that one maybe this year. Well, I digress. So what I did was I started to collect magazines. There was a whole series of Santas that were internationally themed, and they were old world Victoriana type of Santas. And here's my absolute favorite one. They stitched up so great on this even weave. Here's the next one. And I have to tell you, I started this with great gusto. And then with children and my job, look at that one. 15 years went by. I got it out periodically at Christmas time. And here's the Santa. I gave him blue eyes. And I had grand plans. Like everything that I do, sometimes when you get going, like a new beginner, you start going, oh, I could do this and this and this. So those are all the Santas that went around the edge. 15 years in the making. And then I decided to go, instead of just one stitch, I realized over time you could do 2 threads over 2. And I made the center. So this is a nice size little table topper. And since the project is so big, I can't do the entire thing to give it any justice, but you can tell I didn't put eyes on the Santas because I didn't know what to do. And I still kind of don't 100% know what I want to do for the eyes. I even didn't put eyes on the reindeer, but I do love this. So in 2016, I decided this was the longest UFO that I had, and I was finishing it and calling it done. I had plans in this negative space to do all kinds of holly leaves and berries and Christmas trees and, well, Victoriana, you know, it was all so much. And I'm very glad I didn't, because I like the look of this plainer, just simple Santas. The little tiny Santas are really cute, and then the big one in the center. And I hang this up or put it on my couch at Christmas time. Many years it kind of sat in a box, but I'd get it out periodically. And I should show you what the back looks like on some of these. I didn't know anything about cross stitch, but when you look at it, I put knots in my thread, and it's not too bad, but it could be better. And I thought I'm never, ever going to do another cross stitch again, because it took a lot of concentration and a lot of time, good lighting, and I just didn't have a whole lot of that as my children grew up. They've all grown up now and have kids of their own. My youngest has a grand dog, and they have their own lives. And then COVID happened this year to me. In 2022, I got COVID twice, and I'm a bit of a long hauler at this point. And before I got sick, my husband's aunt, so it would be my aunt Nancy, I knew her 40 years of my life, she found this vintage cross stitch in a thrift shop and gave it to me. It would be about a year ago now, and then she passed away. And I decided to unframe it, and oh, look at it, it's country blue and pinks. And this is out of the frame and washed once. I think I'm going to soak it again. It was all this grungy yellow, brown that happens over time. But I think I am enchanted with this cross stitch. The stitches are so good. And the color is just like it was when this person had to have done this about the time I was just learning cross stitch. It's a lovely little sampler, and when I washed it, I saw something I never saw before. The stitcher's initials in 1988. So it was about the time. This is the things that my mother loved. This house that I'm sitting in now was my parents', and the kitchen was all Geese and country blue. I have remodeled it. But look at the back. Amazing, amazing stitches. I've learned so much just by unframing this. E, C, P. Evelyn, Edith, Elizabeth, Emma, who knows? But this person is an exquisite stitcher, and by looking at this and looking at the zigzagged edge, I always use painter's tape or masking tape, and how the back, no knots, so it's on a quest to learn how to cross stitch without knots. And my daughter cross stitches also, and sent me a few TikToks on how to do it. And I realized after I was so sick with COVID, it was mild, but it's hung on. In quilting, you'll see a lot of quilting on this channel. In fact, last week I did a cross stitch granny square, but I've been doing the great granny squared quilt along and crochet along and cross stitch along with Fat Quarter Shop. And I realized I can cross stitch while I'm recovering from COVID. And the other thing of the whole thing is patterns with cross stitch, the way they're written now, instead of those black and white ones, the current cross stitch along that I'm doing, Stitch Along, is You're the Boss by Lori Holt. Now, I'm a late comer to Lori Holt's cross stitch and all of her channel, because Farm Girl Vintage is a lot of applique. That's her quilt, and I am not a big appliquer, but the Great Granny Squared, when Fat Quarter Shop brought that up, I'm like, wow. And the granny stitch pattern for free, if you're into granny squares, wow, it was free, and it's color and easy. So a quick peek, you can see color patterns, and their large print makes all the difference. So I like to use my Sew Tights for a line guide as well as a needle keeper. So I did a deep dive as I was starting out my You're the Boss stitch along, and I realized Lori Holt has these design boards. So this is what I'm using for all my threads right now. I have another needle minder here. I'm using flannel. If you look up Lori Holt's videos on the tutorial of how she makes these, it's a foam core board. I chose flannel. She uses batting, and I glued on a binding like I would a quilt, just like Lori did. And I'm like, this is extremely clever and very, very useful. So this is all I have to show you on what I have been stitching. But I've learned that cross stitch, you don't have to use a powerful sewing machine like I had been with quilting. There's no rotary cutters to hurt my hands or cut my finger. There is not as much brain power, which if you are a long COVID person, you'll find out that your brain needs a little more time to process things. And quilting, I would sit and stare at the pattern and couldn't figure it out for a while. Same with the sewing machine. I long arm too. It took me 6 weeks to do a small quilt that would normally take me a couple weeks. But here I am. I've been so excited about this. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on the 5th block, which is the whole top row. There's one little quilt block that goes here, and then another row, and then Lori put You're the Boss of Your Own Quilt, but I'm not sure what I'm going to put in the middle. You're the boss of your own project. You're the boss of your own life. You're the boss, period. She has a free alphabet on Fat Quarter Shop, so you can put whatever you want in the middle. Kimberly Jolly on her FlossTube also said you could take Stitchy Stars, which I bought that pattern, will fit in the middle too if you wanted to do just quilt blocks, and most of them are stars. Well, all of these are stars. What am I saying? But the thing about this is it's evolving and my stitching is getting better. You can see I started here and I used knots, but as I'm coming along, it's getting better. My back is almost as good as the front. And I love these colors. And I like how you can buy just a floss pack and it will match the exact pattern notations in Laura's pattern. Love it. So I have my little needle minder here, just a nice strong magnet. I bought it at a quilt show. I'm still using painter's tape. I think when I take this and I trim it down, I'm going to zigzag the edges because I'm going to do a finishing tutorial just like Kimberly did at Fat Quarter Shop. I like how she uses sticky boards and puts it in a shadow box. I'm using a Q-snap frame. I think I've done stitch in hand and I've done with my Q-snap frame. What I like about it is you can kind of loosen it and tighten it easy, and it doesn't wrinkle or leave lines. This is just the edge of the frame. So you can still buy a Q-snap. I bought this a long time ago in the 90s, I think, and it still works. I still kept it. I'm so glad I kept all my cross-stitching things. So now what I want to talk about is my excitement for cross-stitch has made me realize there's a lot of new things, accessories to go with your cross-stitch while you're working in your handwork. That's what I love about cross-stitch, the meditative slow stitching. I like slow stitching. I like doing English paper piecing if you're a quilter. So I like stitching. I started with needlepoint. I started with candle wicking. If you want to see, in this stack of patterns my mom sent me, had my old hand stitching stuff, including candle wicking. Yes, I did this in the 70s. Just French knots. I learned how to master French knots at a very young age. I made a lot of these cute little Christmas decorations. Oh yes, how about this one? I made the rose. Yep. Embroidery. They call it candle wicking, but this was one of my first projects. I did this macrame purse, entered it in the 4-H fair when I was about 11, so it would have been about 1977, and I got a blue ribbon. Yes, I miss, this is August and the fairs are going on right now. I miss that 4-H stuff. It just kind of doesn't exist where I live like it did in a different area, part of Michigan where I grew up. So I realized that when I was stitching a long time ago, you wound on floss bobbins and you could write it on the numbers, the DMC code on the top, or you could put them in little Ziploc bags, little mini Ziplocs that were on a ring. I gave those to my daughter a long time ago when she started cross stitching, as well as all the Ada cloth I had and DMC floss. And then I was like, well, the good news is I don't have to substitute flosses with what I have or what's available in my area. The beauty of the internet is I can go to Fat Quarter Shop and click a link and the thread pack is all available. But floss drops I have been very, very interested in because I thought that would be the best way to put the floss on the floss drop, and I'll show you what I made. I like that better than winding it because you can just easily zip one thread off, and I'm doubling one thread. And I cut on my Cricut of this cardstock. It's a little heavier than cardstock, but not quite chipboard. And I have an old book that I've been cutting out for making paper flowers. I cut those out, and then I made my own little floss tags or floss drops. This one is coffin shaped. Actually, go this way, right? Because there's a little circle on the top. And where did I get these SVGs for my Cricut? If you have a Cricut or a silhouette, I bought them on Etsy for $4.50. I just couldn't wrap my mind around how to do my own floss drop, thread drops, thread tags. You can look up, but thread drop is what I looked up, and $4.50. I got, look at this cute little heart one. The only thing about the heart one is it's bigger and it kind of bends at the point, but it's still super cute. But my favorite is this one, the traditional floss drop. I love it. It's nice and sturdy. I used 2 layers of the pages out of the old book, and I glued it on this, so it took 3 cuts. And then here's another traditional one that I like a lot because it's sturdy, and I just used a glue stick and I glued 3 layers together. And this is testing. I do like the look of upcycling the book, because I was going to throw the book away. And it's a nice heavy paper that's not shiny, but you could use cardstock. You could make them super cute. You could use color schemes. The next ones I make, I might cut and use 2 layers of this to make a really thick center core, and then glue I like this one because it's, you know, fall is in the air around here, and make a thicker veneer of these. And I already had all of this sitting around my house, so I spent $4.50 for the SVG, and I upcycled everything I have in the house. And one thing I'm trying to do is upcycle and recycle everything that I can. I'm not great at it. I'm going to admit I'm not great. Cutting out plastics is hard. So that was why I didn't want to buy a whole bunch of floss drops. Now, the great thing about this is you could write the color on here, and then when it's worn out, you can upcycle another one. So something that I've been thinking is I still have these really cool napkins that match that go with my Santa from the 80s or early 90s. I can't exactly remember when I got these, but there are several cute little stitch card patterns. That is my favorite one that I saw right now, I think is M on Fat Quarter Shop, that Lori Holt designed, and it was strawberries, a teacup, a little rose design, and a teapot. And I thought, wouldn't that be adorable on one of these? And how would I finish it? I don't know. I like to let the project evolve, and whatever speaks to me, or whatever I learn, or whatever I see on YouTube, or I watch a lot of Kimberly Jolly's FlossTube and her FlossTube University, because I consider myself, even though I stitched a lot a long time ago, I feel like I am a cross-stitch beginner. So I have a lot to learn, and I'm very excited, and I hope as we go on FlossTube, I'll have more in process projects. I'm thinking about taking a couple of free things that I saw out there with sunflowers. One is Fat Quarter Shop has my favorite, and stitching a sunflower, because if you listen to my podcast, I tried to grow sunflowers from seed, and 3 seeds sprouted. The squirrels didn't get them. They're not real tall, but they are growing, and I might get 3 sunflower seeds that go all the way to maturity and bloom. And I'm going to leave them there all winter because I want the birds to have the seeds. So I think because I live on the 45th parallel, the trees are starting to turn color. It's 77 right now, but it's been dropping into the 40s at night. And, you know, you can feel that summer is winding up, and fall season will soon be here. Also, September 1st to me was when school always started, and that's my personal new year. So I'm writing goals and lists, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to work on, what projects I'd like to take on. I'd like to stitch a Halloween beautiful, sampler or scene or pictorial thing that I've seen a couple of really cute ones. Maybe Boo Crew, that one was adorable. It's a free one on Fat Quarter Shop too. So I don't know. I'm waiting. So I was very excited that Fat Quarter Shop invited me to be part of their Stitch Along for You're the Boss. If you like that, you can find it on their shop. I have an affiliate link for Fat Quarter Shop, and this is the current Stitch Along, and of course you don't have to join a Stitch Along. It's adorable, and you can do anything you want in the center. That's what I like about this particular project. So have a great week. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope to do another FlossTube probably in a couple of weeks. We'll see how stitching goes, and I'll give you an update then. I also might show a couple of quilting projects. I'm working on quite a few bindings right now, and the Granny Square is my machine stitching project, but I think I'm going to start a couple of handwork projects, in particular English paper piecing. So I might share some of those next week, or maybe more like 2 weeks. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks for stopping by. I'm glad to meet you on FlossTube. Have a wonderful week.